Hello EFD squad and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. We did say last week that Doogie was going to be our main presenter from here on in, but he finds himself in Scotland. So back to the tried and tested reign of Hamill for at least 1 week. Anyhow, first question comes from Meath98, and he's asked, who should Real Madrid sign to replace Ramos in the long run? And who better qualified to answer this question than these two fine gentlemen who are enjoying the studio that is at around -2 on a Friday morning. Hence the coats, hence the jumpers. This is a bit trademark now, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Like Uma Thurman with those.
Trademark my cab.
I think you're kicking us off, Joe, aren't you, with a transfer that's in the offing?
Well, it seems to be, anyway. It is, of course, Eder Militao, the Porto central defender. Obviously, there's lots of talk at the moment about Real Madrid trying to find a centre-back to replace Sergio Ramos, who I believe is now 32. They're scrambling about to find a partner for Rafa Varane. And they seem to have come to the conclusion, or at least that's what Marca are reporting. I think it's Jose Felix Diaz, who's actually a pretty reliable Real Madrid journalist reporting this, that they are extremely interested in the Brazilian centre-half from Porto. He only joined 6 months ago from Sao Paulo. He played at Sao Paulo as a right-back and put up some pretty incredible numbers there. I think he was over 5 tackles and interceptions.
We profiled him on Scout Report, didn't we? Militao, he's one of Pato's picks. So
he is one of Pato's picks.
For more in-depth stats.
Real Madrid obviously taking some Patrick Van Straten advice and extremely interested in him. He's been moved into a centre-back this season. I think that's where he's played the majority of the games for Porto, who are having a great season, by the way. Top of Liga NOS by 5 points. I think they finished top of the Champions League group as well, didn't they? Nice. 16 points, which is pretty damn good, really despite the fact that they had a slightly weaker group than a lot of past years. Still very impressive. Him making his debut campaign at centre-half as well, leading that back line. I think he scored on his debut in the Champions League against Schalke as well, if I remember rightly. A little header from a corner. And he's been quietly impressive. And I think the reason that Real Madrid are after him, and a lot of other European clubs are after him, is he does have a release clause. Okay. So he currently has a release clause of 50 million euros.
Quite conservative,
which is not massive,
recent standards.
But it tends to happen when Portuguese sides bring a player in from Brazil. In order to sign the higher caliber players from Brazil, they have to give them lower level release clauses in order to get them in the club and get them for as long as they can. So 50 million euros, that does rise to 75 million euros between May the 13th actually, and mid-July, I think. So there is a period where that rises to 75 million in the summer. So the reason that Real Madrid are going for him now, I believe, is because they're going to get 25 million euros off, and they're probably going to say, you know what, Porto, you can keep hold of him. We'll give you 6 months more of him. You can keep him to the summer. We don't need him right now. We'll take him in the summer. We'll pay the 50 million euros right now, and we'll have what they consider anyway. Certainly Real Madrid, the people that have been speaking to Marca, rate him extremely highly. They are seeing him as the long-term heir to Sergio Ramos, the long-term centre-back partner to Rafa Varane. I watched a few of his highlights today. I haven't watched a lot of Porto this season, but he's extremely athletic. He actually reminded me a little bit of Marquinhos. He's only 21 years old, he's 6'1", very athletic. He's a really good distributor. Obviously, I think his time at right-back has helped that, but he steps in really nicely and distributes between the lines beautifully. He's not like a crash bang wallop centre back. He is quite refined, so I'm quite excited to see him in a Real Madrid shirt if they manage to get him. Whether or not this story bears through, because a lot of other clubs are interested in him as well. I've heard Bayern Munich might be interested in him. Manchester United are certainly interested in him. So Real Madrid will probably try and get this deal done in January. If they're going to get anyone, it will be Eder Militao by the looks of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thorough, Joe. Almost like you had time for some research this morning onto a man who was only told he was on the show with about half an hour to go. So, Michael,
I actually managed to. It's funny you mentioned Marquinhos, because he's actually the guy that I've gone for, and it's also interesting because I was pretty lazy, to be honest. I was just thinking, best centre backs in Europe at a decent age. Marquinhos kind of stands out, and it also turns out that actually from another source, El País, saying this week that Real Madrid are quite interested in the PSG centre-back. He's more the finished product. He would obviously cost a lot more as well. I would expect, because he's got a contract running until 2022 with PSG, that Real Madrid would probably, I expect, have to break the world record for him. I would think.
I would
probably.
actually agree. I think
like,
if you're
probably
going to go out
70, 80
and
mil.
get a 24
But
year old
like,
centre-back
I think
him.
it might be worth it if they want that a quick fix. I mean, it's also interesting that Militao comes from Porto as well, because I think the last time that Real Madrid were this worried about their defence, kind of in the long term, was back in around 2006, 2007, and that's when they went to get Pepe from Porto, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess that's just a coincidence. But anyway, but yeah, I think he would probably be, in terms of a quick fix, probably the best option. Not that necessarily it's in centre back that their defensive issues definitely lie. I think they're conceding at the worst rate in the league since 2008-09, which I think was just before Ramos got put to centre back. But then you also have to kind of consider that Casemiro's been out injured a bit this season. Their midfield generally hasn't been functioning as well, has it? So there's probably some accountability there. But I think in terms of the kind of the way that the stats line up, I think Marquinhos pretty much matches Ramos quite similarly.
Yeah. Do you think? I still think Ramos has got more to give.
Yeah, probably. I think, but in the long term, I think Marquinhos would be like. I think I think in 1 or 2 years, I think Ramos will likely decline more significantly than it has done.
Yeah, might have to temper his playing style slightly. It is going to be of great help to him that Varane is playing next to him, so he doesn't necessarily have to cover as much ground, and Varane is very quick off the mark, we know that, but his role is really to step out, win the ball before it reaches Rafael Varane, isn't it? So maybe he'll have to temper that aggression slightly and play as a bit more of a sweeper in his later years. If we get into 33, 34 and he still finds himself in the first team. I've actually gone to Real Madrid to look for the answer, really.
Okay.
So internally, Jesus Vallejo, I think they had him earmarked as the long-term solution for Sergio Ramos before he got stricken with all these injury problems. So just to give you a bit of background on Vallejo, he was previously the captain of Zaragoza as a teenager. He was recently in the Spanish national setup under Lopetegui against, I think it was for a friendly against Switzerland, but he's only clocked 90 minutes of football this season for Real Madrid, and that was in the Champions League because of recurrent injury problems. He's now missed over 65 games. That's including spells at Zaragoza and Frankfurt, where when he played, he had a very productive spell actually in Germany. And that's over the course of 4 seasons. He left a training session earlier this year after tears and lesions to his femoral bicep in one of his legs. So another nasty one for him to pick up there. I know, yeah. He's been called subsequently the Spanish Jonathan Woodgate, which is not a great moniker to have hanging over you at this point in your career. I think it's because there's other similarities in that I think Madristas actually quite liked Jonathan Woodgate and the committed way in which he played and the manner in which he wore his heart on his sleeve. But Vallejo was also sent off on his debut, and injuries are hampering his progression. So I think that's why that sort of ended up in that manner. But as a result, Javi Sanchez has been called up from the Castilla side. Now, this is a 21-year-old, been at Real Madrid since he was 8, and he looks like he might have usurped Vallejo's place as that sort of project at centre-back. So they've got Nacho, who's very good cover. I really like Nacho. He can play right back as well. He's been a really good servant when the club have called upon him. Clocked up a lot of minutes last year. But Javi Sanchez now finding himself getting these substitute appearances and sort of training with the first side. So Julian Lopetegui took him on the club's pre-season tour of America. So before he got the boot, he obviously rated him quite highly, enough to finally move him up from Castilla, because he's 21 now, and if you're not making the grade by 21, 22, then it's probably curtains for you. But we saw Mariano Diaz take until that age to kind of come knocking on the door of the first side. So it tends to be a little bit later, I guess, with Real Madrid, and we're seeing that with Barcelona a little bit now. I mean, Busquets was, 19, 20 before he was even given a chance, wasn't he, by Pep Guardiola? So it is harder for these guys to break through to that first side, especially given the manner in which they've started the season. Although Solari is trying slightly more experimental lineups, isn't he?
3-5-2.
A couple of youngsters included against Betis. But anyway, back to Javi Sanchez. He made his debut actually coming on for Ramos against Pilsen in the Champions League and scored a peach of a goal against some minnows. I think they were called Mestia or Mestelilia or something of that nature in the cup. It was like a little delicate little chip that came in off the crossbar. Lovely. It was class. But just to finish off with the third player, because all of these guys are interconnected, Real Madrid actually appear to have missed out on the best prospect of all, which is Mario Hermoso, who was actually in Castilla. They sort of, rumour has it that they picked Vallejo over him to progress into the first team, subsequently let him go. He joined Espanyol, and now he's already in Luis Enrique's plans in the Spanish national side. So he's 23, a little bit older, which is perhaps why they let him go over Vallejo. But 14 appearances this season, including 2 goals, 3 tackles and interceptions for Espanyol, up from 1.8 last campaign. And that's not the only thing that's up. This appears to be a guy who's really taken to La Liga football. So his average passes have gone up from 43 to 52.5, and his pass accuracy has gone up from 74 to 83. So good. Really good when it comes to distributing the ball. Really good improvements. So completing 5 long balls per 90 as well, which is pretty impressive. So
I think Ramos completes something like 6 or something. So that's
pretty similar. I put down here pretty much on a par with Ramos. He's completing 5 clearances, only dribbled past roughly 0.6 times per game. So it looks like a tough proposition to get by. I think he's about 6'1", but he's quite a well-built guy. I mean, this might be the result of Espanyol having the 7th leakiest defence when it comes to conceding shots. So that's probably why they make the 3rd most tackles too. And they don't get a lot of cover, it would seem, in midfield in this 4-3-3 system that they're playing now, from the likes of Esteban Granero and Dada. I mean, Esteban Granero, to be a starting... I think he's only played over 1 season of football where he's made 20 plus starts, or maybe 2. This is one of his more prolific seasons in terms of appearances, on 14, and just a bit of his career kind of tailed off for that promising start at Real Madrid, and he's become a bit of a bang average midfielder as a result. But like I said, defence not getting much support. They complete very modest defensive actions, I think around 2 tackles and interceptions each between them. So Hermoso, really the standout player of this campaign, having to pick up a lot of defensive slack. And he's already worth 20 mil, according to Transfermarkt. And we know that Transfermarkt's valuations are pretty modest, under contract till 2020. So Real Madrid and Barcelona do have a habit of going back for players that they're pretty quick to admit when they've made a mistake, aren't they? And then they don't mind putting some money down to pull these players back. And you'd imagine that Espanyol would get a few favours out of it as well. A few first options, a few loans from the big boys. I think that's how they facilitate these moves. So we might see Hermoso back in a Real Madrid shirt, as a long-term Sergio Ramos replacement. But Vallejo, maybe injuries are gonna curtail his progress, and Javi Sanchez, the jury's still out whether he's good enough or not. But who would you guys pick? Let us know in the comments below. Would you go from the youth? Would you go for Marquinhos, tried and tested? Or would you go for a bit of both? And Joe's boy over there. Let us know, like I said, in the comments. Moving on. Our next topic, before we move on to quickfire questions, comes from Ali Abdullah BHR, and he's put thoughts on Spygate, gentlemen. Now we have a bit more information. We can maybe comment on this, but it's caused a furore amongst the British media. What do you think, Joe, on the end first? Because you've heard a few tidbits of information.
Tidbits, nailed it. I don't have a problem with it, to be totally honest. I think it's clearly happening on the reg, and people don't always find out, and Marcelo Bielsa's been caught, hasn't he? If you don't know about this story, by the way, effectively what's happened is Bielsa has been caught using spies to spy on the training of opposition teams. He was caught by Derby County. Interestingly, the police caught the guy with pliers in his bag with a spare change of clothes and binoculars.
I don't mind standing on public property and observing training, but actually breaking in
as he was trying to get into the training ground. Caught him, obviously pinged him. Marcelo Bielsa then admitted to it, and then this week came out and did a 70-minute long PowerPoint presentation, the height of tousery, to the press, unveiling all of Derby County's tactics and saying, look, this is how much research I do on it. It's like nearly 200 hours of research. Do you think that sending an intern to a training session on the day before the game really has that much bearing on what I'm doing? Which I kind of understand. Yeah. He's trying to get the edge on. Is this player injured?
The obvious question to that is why do it if it doesn't bear that much?
Well, he proclaims
fruit.
that the reason that he does it is he's trying to get any last-minute notions on whether players are injured or whether there's going to be any late alterations or anything like that. And it's clearly worked. He said he's done it for every team so far he's played in the Championship. He is top of the Championship, of course, with Leeds United doing thoroughly well. And I don't have any problem with it. You know, the guy is trying to use all means. It's not the first time it's happened. I remember earlier in the season, the same thing happened to Hoffenheim. I think it was Werder Bremen flew a drone over the Hoffenheim training pitch and recorded the Hoffenheim training session.
I kind of think all is fair in love and war, and trying to achieve promotion from the Championship is the most attritional type of war.
I think Nagelsmann came out afterwards and said, you know what, like, hats off. Like, I've got all respect for you trying to do it. If you can gain an edge, then do it.
Imagine I think they your job at Hoffenheim be shooting down the drone.
I think they did shoot the drone down. And I don't know, it had a big bloody Werder Bremen stamp on it or something. I don't know how they knew it was Bremen. Probably because they're playing on the weekend. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it, man. It's just trying to gain an edge. And he got caught and he's admitted to it.
He says it calms his anxieties, doesn't he? Covering every single base. And going back to this 70-minute talk that he did with the press after the fact, he actually revealed that they'd watched every Derby County match of 2018. They'd done 4 hours research on each match, which equated to 360 hours worth of research on Derby County alone. They'd deciphered Harry Wilson's corners, hadn't they? With the one finger, two finger, arms up. So this is a guy who kind of who's specialist. He's a specialist in the granular, isn't he? And I remember when a reporter asked him, "What are you going to do with your Christmas over the festive period?" He said, "I'm going to exercise for 2 days, and then I'm going to watch videos for 14 hours a day on all my opposition, just so I've got the upper hand when we come back over the break." This must have been it obviously wasn't in English football where you don't have a winter break, but it was elsewhere.
A class anecdote that came out of it actually, where he lost back when he was manager of Bilbao and doing very well over there. He went to Barcelona and lost 3-0 to Barcelona away from home in the Copa del Rey final, and he went for a drink afterwards with Pep Guardiola, and he invited Pep to look at his analysis that he'd done, and Pep was blown away. Like, this guy does freakish levels of analysis. Like Chris said, then 360 hours of analysis for Derby County. Imagine what he was doing for Barcelona. So Pep was blown away and said, "You know more about Barcelona than you can even comprehend."
Well, subsequently, like, Pep and Pochettino have both become big acolytes of Bielsa, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really make a difference that he beat 3-0, but equally, it's just like shows. This should not surprise people. I read another story yesterday about Bielsa. Back when he was in Argentina, he was confronted by some angry Argentina fans, and he pulled a hand grenade and went, "Right, I'm pulling the pin out." Pulled the pin out like this and went, "Right, what are we doing?" Yes, he did, honestly. Bielsa did.
Wow.
He went, "Right,
surely
let's just go."
It was a dud.
I don't know, mate, but he got hold of a hand grenade and pulled the pin.
He seems like just a guy, he just operates at both ends of the spectrum, because I've also heard an anecdote from Sid Lowe where he got an altercation with a builder and felt so bad about it that he took himself to the police station. So this sort of admission of guilt is like a character trait.
Yeah.
It's like,
I like it.
He has to repent, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do like that a lot.
But I also think this is just a huge... I don't see how this can be painted in any other way than a huge overreaction by the British media, who are sort of perpetuating this idea of, like, Englishmen as noble.
It's always been the case though, hasn't it? Let's face it.
It has, and I've read some articles which actually have accused Jose Mourinho of doing exactly the same thing when he first came over to Chelsea, and I'm sure if that was true that, Frank Lampard didn't mind them and he was picking up league titles as a result. What, Jose's refuted that, or Frank?
Has,
that Jose did
that they didn't know, really.
Because... rumours that Villas-Boas used to do that for him.
Well, there's a quote from Villas-Boas saying, "I used to do it."
Yeah, of course, we don't know the facts, but equally, I don't mind if Villas-Boas is doing it on behalf of Jose Mourinho as well. I think Bielsa has gone on record to say he sees it as careless to not seek the advantage. Yeah. And this is the sort of guy that you want in your camp. Weren't the Leeds fans, Leeds players doing that as a celebration?
But I've seen, I've seen a lot of people talking about, oh, he should be sacked. Leeds should get points deductions.
What?
It's like, what are we talking about here? What's going to happen is the LMA are going to give him a slap on the wrist and remind him of his responsibilities. The EFL are going to get all the managers in the league together in a room and go, you know what, we've investigated the issue. We think we'd just like to remind you of your responsibilities towards the respect of the game, and that'll be it. He's not going to get anything. And rightly
That's fine. I do like it, to be fair, and I think I like the answer, but I think there is also a sense as well. I'm not totally there is a certain problem to it as I just think if this then became a widespread thing, right, and everyone was spying on each other, it could quite quickly lead to, I don't know, a point where security is so tight at grounds that it becomes almost impossible. And also, I don't know. It's just I don't know. I don't like the idea of it. Like the fact that the clubs are becoming
more self-contained.
Yeah. I don't really like the idea of that. To be honest.
But we're also operating in a world where football clubs are owned by states, are owned by countries, where their sense of morality is absolutely diabolical. So I feel like, why are people getting up in arms about this when they could be focusing on financial fair play? They could be focusing on where the money has come from, in terms of Manchester City's transfers. Bigwigs from UEFA and FIFA, rather than one manager who's actually operating within the legalities of the game. Maybe they should change the rules if they want it to be slightly more fair, more noble. But then, I guess executing that, maintaining that is going to be nigh on impossible, isn't it?
Great shithousery.
But
although, did you see Pizza Hut mugged Leeds United off on Twitter yesterday? On the back of it, absolutely fantastic from Pizza Hut, superb. Leeds, they said something like, "Oh, Leeds, have you sent a spy to our training ground?" To Pizza Hut, so you can see how you make your pizza. And Leeds mugged them off and went, "Now we've fed Domino's. You take a week to deliver." And Pizza Hut just came back and went, "Yeah, you haven't delivered since 1992."
Oh, that's good.
Superb.
That's very
and then Sunderland tweeted Pizza Hut one like that, and they went, they said when Pizza Hut admins come back from lunch or something, and then Pizza Hut just went, "Yeah, get back to your Netflix documentary."
I did like when we went to see Charlton the Sunderland. So one of the Charlton chants was stick your Netflix up your ass.
Yeah, it's great.
It was brilliant.
But this is a guy who's taken a team that lost 20 league games last season to top by 4 points, and the only addition he's made to the squad is Jack Harrison, I believe.
Yeah. Although I think he has brought in a pretty big name over the last couple of days.
Kiko Casilla
from Real Madrid.
Okay. What, the right back?
The
goalkeeper.
Oh, the keeper.
I cannot wait for Bielsa in the Prem.
Not sure.
Anyway, let's hope Leeds get to the Prem. Let's hope that the Owsery continues, and maybe we refocus on some other bigger issues in football rather than an intern peeking over a fence, although the pliers, naughty. Yeah. First quickfire question comes from the Doc Redstone, and he's asked, if you were to appoint a new manager for your favourite club, who should it be and why? So if your current manager had to leave the club as a result of this question.
So Solskjaer's gone, which is a shame on this one. Obviously Pochettino. I think maybe a year ago I would have been saying Zidane though.
Really?
So, I don't know. I was caught up a little bit in the Zidane hype. I definitely remember saying on a Sunday Vibes that I think Zidane would be a good option for Man United. But right now it has to be Pochettino. I just think Zidane will say no to us. And Pochettino's the clear favourite, and Man United desperately want him. But more importantly, let's just get a sporting director. How about that? Great idea. Yeah, let's get a sporting director first.
I think that's probably the dream, isn't it? Paul Mitchell and Pochettino working together again. I would say Pochettino as well. There's no one else who is as outstanding, has the track record that he has had at Spurs, especially just the kind of continuity over 4 or 5 years.
Can I ask you about Solskjaer fever? Have you been swept up in Solskjaer fever?
I've not been that much, but I think if I regularly went to United games and I was going to Old Trafford over the last month, I probably would be, because apparently it has been unbelievable. If you look at kind of fan cams after the game and whatnot, the atmosphere is just unreal. And actually, I was listening to the United Rant podcast, which I tend to listen to every now and then. Shout out, by the way, probably my favourite United kind of piece of content.
But he was going to say favourite podcast, and I was about to slap him.
But Paul from the United Rant podcast, who usually is a very rationally minded bloke, and generally speaks a lot of sense on the club, has a good has a good understanding, has been to a lot of press conferences and stuff. Used to cover them a lot for Bleacher Report, I believe.
I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
He has been, and I didn't expect him to, but he has been absolutely swept up by Solskjaer fever, and he makes some good points in terms of just how good the feeling is around the club right now. The atmosphere is as good as it's been since Ferguson.
Sure, I mean that's probably because Ferguson's on the training ground going, move him, let's have him in.
Well, there you go. Well, yeah, that's great, isn't it? That's great.
How much credit do we give Solskjaer for that, and how big a part of the game should that be now? Has that been a little bit neglected in the past?
I think
there's not enough importance been put on the relationship between the manager, the fans.
I think that can get you going, but it can only take you so far. That fever of Solskjaer being a United legend,
that upturn due to the positivity.
Suddenly we're playing attacking football. Rashford's there, Martial's flying down, we've got Lingard coming in, Angel Gomez is getting minutes.
It's the Busby Babes all over again.
We're flying down the wings against Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah. That fever is good, but what happens when Manchester United have a bad spell and we're suddenly maybe 3 draws and a loss, or we're struggling? That is when real managers' tactical imprint on teams comes to the fore and wins you games, and that is where Solskjaer is going to struggle.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, you must give him credit though. I think we all were like pleasantly surprised at tactically how he managed the Spurs game. Obviously,
definitely,
a bit fortunate in terms of De Gea being on such good form, but the first half performance I thought was excellent. But yeah, I would agree. I think I do have to put my rational cap on
United,
it and say,
a little bit like Real Madrid in the sense that winning trophies, achieving a certain degree of success, is more important to manage the egos that only those clubs can afford to assemble in one place
for Manchester United. One time. For Manchester United, I actually genuinely believe, much like Barcelona and Ajax, it's more important to play in a certain way than it is to win.
Is the Man United DNA?
But that's the thing, because this is what Neville was saying the other day.
He's the most practical manager ever.
Yeah, of course. But he was the most practical manager to a level. But you would never ever have seen him play 6 behind the ball at home to Burnley.
For sure, but that should just. But I don't think that's necessarily something to do with Man United. No club of the stature of Man United should be playing that, and that's. And that just goes to show how poor the managerial appointments have been.
AC Milan in the 90s won league title after league title.
But that was it. But that was in the context of Italian football, which was incredibly defensive at the time.
Yeah, but that's what Jose Mourinho tried to do to United.
So but not in the context of a league which was built on. That was in the context of a league where more teams are playing attacking football than ever now. Like that.
So you think the manager needs to adhere to a certain set of values, and what are you saying, McCubbin, that the manager needs to be given the freedom to bring his own blueprint to the table?
If Jose continued to win 1-0 and draw 1-1 but was winning league titles, would he be a Manchester United favourite?
I don't know, not necessarily. But if he was winning league titles, I think he would be. But I don't think that's necessarily the point I'm getting at. I think it's more just the fact that I don't think, in the same way that Ajax and Barcelona have in the past, United have as defined a concept of what the style is. Like Barcelona, if you speak to Barcelona fans and they are not happy if they're not in 4-3-3. Like genuinely, they are so protective over that.
I definitely
formation.
agree with that. But United's is slightly different in that there is a definite 100% attitude that youngsters from the Manchester United academy would always
That's
trump.
different to tactical.
It is, but I'm not saying tactical blueprint. I'm saying the values of Manchester United.
Totally.
And 100%, Manchester United would rather a 19-year-old came from the academy and was hit and miss than we signed a 30-year-old who was going to be good for a season.
I mean, it wasn't just him failing. Wasn't just solely down to him. The club kind of needs
massive
to reflect
restructuring
on an insular level, doesn't it? I think there's no need to do any more quick-fire questions. We've had a little enjoyable debate there. Our big match preview this week was RB Leipzig against Dortmund, which is Saturday at 5:30. But I probably think there's no need to do that now. We've had
should we just give a quick prediction or something?
A 15-minute chat. Okay, so I'll give you some context then, because we have done a bit of research on it. So the Bundesliga is back after the winter. What do they call it? The winter. Oh, it's just a winter break.
That's winter break.
Yeah, and it's basically, I mean, two titans facing off against one another. So that the Bullen in reasonable form. They've won 6 of their last 8 games. Of course, Dortmund have only lost 1 game this season. Timo Werner and Youssef Poulsen are in fine form at 11 goals and 2 assists for Werner, 8 goals and 2 assists for Poulsen. And we don't really need to talk about Paco and Royce Stewie and Jadon Sancho. Absolutely flying. So it's 2 teams with a fairly prolific forward setup. What do we think the score is going to be, gentlemen? Starting with you, Joseph.
Dortmund to win 2-0.
3-1 Dortmund.
Oh, it is Leipzig at home. I'm gonna go 2-1 Leipzig just to mix it up a little bit. I think Dortmund have been very fortunate up until this point. Guys, that is all we've got time for on Continental Club. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, I'll get my words out eventually. That's very dry. This room is very dry. Then please go over to FDFC and watch Sevens, watch non-league vlogs and squad goals. Gentlemen, anything else to plug?
We Need to Talk's just gone live on Football Daily, so come and check that out if you haven't already.
Cool.
See you later.
Bye-bye.